Like, oh, in my neighborhood, there's 4 homes for sale and they're all competing for buyers. I just feel like we haven't had that in forever, right?
What we haven't had is the move-up buyer.
Yeah.
What we haven't had is a contingent buyer.
Yeah.
But it certainly takes the edge off.
Yeah. And then we talked about the affordability index, which is home price rate and then median income, right?
Yeah.
And I think looking at that data, you go, oh man, it's the worst it's really ever been. But the aha for me was, well, this is for a buyer. What if you're a homeowner, right? Because it's a fixed. Talk about how mortgage servicers have the best reviews of any business online.
Yeah. I mean, they suck, let's be honest, right? Like, it's not like they're good,
Yeah.
but they're also highly misunderstood.
I think that's a big problem is the average person just doesn't know how to navigate it because it's not something you deal with.
Yeah.
And there's, intricacies. And I mean, even when somebody calls me, it's like, okay, you got to take a minute to unravel this and figure out what's going on.
They don't speak the language. Like, it's a whole nother language, understanding the technicalities of homeowners. What's up, everybody? We're back. It's the Mortgage Lounge. We're going to do our weekly dive-in. I'm going to move that out of the way. So we're seeing a lot of news about, inventory spiking. Nationally, that's very true. We're in Orange County, Southern California, so that is a very different market than a lot of markets. It's a very desirable place to live, and Southern California, in our specific neck of the woods, Orange County, is probably the most desirable, or at least almost as desirable as it gets. So we're still seeing inventory climb. Now we're still seeing year-over-year appreciation, but what it's doing is it's tapering down. LA County is starting to notice for the first time very small, we're talking very small incremental, like 1% price drops year over year.
Liking the house you buy is kind of important. And then,
it's true. Before, beggars couldn't be choosers. Now it's like, okay, choice is a good thing. That's going to address the inflation issue too.
Yep, because if you have more inventory, you have less demand per house.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny to think back to a time where it's like, oh, in my neighborhood, there's 4 homes for sale and they're all competing for buyers. I just feel like we haven't had that in forever, right?
What we haven't had is the move-up buyer.
Yeah.
What we haven't had is a contingent buyer.
Yeah.
Honestly, for the better part of my career, from 2008 all the way up until 2020, basically, we had such a thing as a move-up buyer. So young family, most of the time, who ran out of their starter home square footage, right? Because they popped out another kid or two, and people acquire more stuff, and they get older, and they get tired of the tiny master bedroom with the cracker box bathroom, right? That happened to me. That's what you're currently experiencing, correct me if I'm wrong. And eventually you're like, okay, I'm ready to move forward with my life. Well, since COVID, what used to happen is you could make an offer and it was contingent upon you selling your home, which made it really less stressful, we'll call it. How many contingent offers are accepted in today's marketplace?
Hardly any.
Basically zero.
Yeah.
So it eliminated a huge segment of the buyer demand. Now, of course, they had lower interest rates. People don't want to give up their 3% mortgage, their lower tax base. I get it. But at some point, and this is why I think we're seeing inventory doing what it's doing, at some point, it's been 3 years going on 4 now that we've been in this new higher for longer interest rate environment. Well, at some point, people need to move on with their lives. Wouldn't you say that's probably a big contributing factor?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that just mathematically too, your home will appreciate with what the market's doing. So you get a little bit of gain there.
Yeah.
But then you've been paying your mortgage down too. So if you're a move up buyer, a few years ago, it was like, it mathematically doesn't make sense. I'm going to sell my house to buy a smaller house with a higher monthly payment. Like zero logic in making that move, right? Now, between paying your mortgage down, you have appreciation. It's like, oh, we may actually have a bit of a down payment. And while we don't love the idea of going from 3% to 6.5%, life goes on. And but at least we can financially do this now. It makes more sense.
Well, what else has happened in the last 3 or 4 years? Wage growth, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Lots of wage growth.
Yeah. So it's not like we always talk about inflation in the sense of what it costs us. housing, grocery store bill, insurance costs. But it also benefits us in other arenas, our assets and our income. So it's not like it's like a silver bullet and it fixes everything, but it certainly takes the edge off.
Yeah, and we talked about the affordability index, which is home price, rate, and then median income, right?
Yeah.
And I think looking at that data, you go, "Oh man, it's the worst it's really ever been." But the aha for me was, well, this is for a buyer. What if you're a homeowner, right? Because it's a fixed number if you have a 30-year fixed mortgage, and then your wage goes up, so your personal index, if you wanted to say, gets better. That calculation for you personally gets
Interesting.
better.
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all,
Right.
right? We look at these macro, general numbers and we apply them to our individual situation, and it doesn't always work out.
The other thing that came to mind for me is that it's a lot of the same old story of what we always talk about, where this is a personal decision, because if you've been on the fence and you're like, I'm waiting for a decline in the market, you got 1%. Get excited.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm being facetious because it's like 1% on $1,000,000, 10,000
Yeah.
was buying a house at 1,000,000 versus 990 really the reason that you've been waiting. And if you want to wait, if we have another 1%, or even if next year is a 2% decline, like
Yeah.
how many years are you going to wait with where you are in life and the space that you need and everything else? Like it, unless there's a significant fall off, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You're putting your life on hold.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do that for a period of time. It makes sense that people would have done that in 22 and 23 and even 24. But at a certain point, like I keep harping on, life moves forward and you have to make a decision. So I honestly just think that that's probably what's going on here, is people need to move on with their lives. Orange County this time last year had 2,000 homes for sale. Today we have 3,000 homes for sale. 56% increase or something like that, I think was the specific number. And LA County is even more pronounced with their inventory growth. And obviously that's manifesting in a year-over-year price drop. People think a price drop means a bubble is popping. No. We still have, a big percentage of homes owned free and clear. We've talked about this. We still have a big percentage of people who have 30-year fixed at low rates, that have fixed housing costs that were established years ago. Like, this is not a bubble, guys. It's not going to be a bubble. And no matter how many federal government employees Elon Musk and Donald Trump hire, it's not going to cause a real estate crash, at least in Southern California, I don't think.
Talked about it today, by the numbers with that too. That may not come out in job reports for like another 7 months because of the contracts and some of those
Well, they
things.
get 8-month severances.
Right, severances too.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention we got to be better about is we will put links to our sources, right, in these episodes moving forward, because, understandably, you get some people asking for that. And we started that in our last episode. We'll continue that with what we're talking about today. What else? There was some other stuff.
We're going to talk about how mortgage servicers have the best reviews of any business online.
Yeah. I mean, they suck. Let's be honest, right? Like, it's not like they're good,
Yeah.
but they're also highly misunderstood.
I think that's a big problem, is the average person just doesn't know how to navigate it because it's not something you deal with.
Yeah.
And there's, intricacies. And I mean, even when somebody calls me, it's like, okay, you got to take a minute to unravel this and figure out what's going on.
They don't speak the language. Like, it's a whole nother language, understanding the technicalities of home ownership.
Yeah.
When you tell the average new homeowner, oh, just call the escrow department, what does that mean to them?
Right.
They don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Right. What is an escrow department? What's an escrow? What's an escrow mean? Like, literally, I remember when I was a young person, I didn't know what escrow meant.
Right.
What does that mean? You want to talk about the example?
Yeah, I saw a review that was complaining about a servicer because, and it is common that servicers will mess up impound accounts, right? That's why we typically say if you don't have to impound, it's a good thing. Typically not to. But they're like, my payment keeps going up. This has to be illegal. And it's like, well, your impound are your taxes and insurance. And then, yeah, taxes go up every year. In California, it's only 2%. So we have that going for us, but it's much more in other states.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
Say all you want about California, folks. Prop 13 is one of the main reasons I live here.
yeah, I see some crazy tax bills for people that have owned homes for 30, 40 years.
Property tax can only be increased 2% a year at the most. So it's basically unnoticeable.
Yeah, crazy and crazy low for someone that's got a $2 million house and the taxes look like it's 200 or something very low.
Yeah.
So property tax goes up every year. So your impound account is most likely going to go up every year. And then that also homeowners insurance. And and California, it's been tough as most people know, but we're not alone. Texas, Florida have had issues as well. So yes, your mortgage, if you have a 30-year fixed, it does stay for the duration of the loan. But if you're impounding tax and insurance, even if it's small, it will go up. And we've talked about how servicers mess it up. So in this review, someone said it went up $300. And it's like, well, that could be a mistake potentially because they don't understand how whatever state, maybe it was California, impounds work taxes. But either way, it does go up. The other piece was that a lot of times I don't think people understand their loan, right?
Yeah.
Because this particular one was a company that services home equity line of credits, HELOCs, and I don't know of any HELOC that is a fixed rate. It's like by definition, a line of credit is going to be a variable rate.
Yeah.
So luckily rates have been coming down, but if you had on this back in 2022, yeah, your line of credit payment will way up.
On a higher balance, So what's a HELOC? HELOC is an acronym, home equity line of credit. And the best way I know how to explain HELOCs is it's a giant credit card. That's all it is. The only difference between a HELOC and a credit card is you have collateral on a HELOC. What's the collateral?
Your house.
Yeah. So instead of if you care to nerd out on this, it's based upon the prime index like any other credit card is. But instead of a margin of 25%, because there's credit cards uncollateralized, right? A HELOC has the collateral of your home, so the margin's 0 to 1 or 2 or 3%, right? So it's a big difference, but that's all it is. It's a credit card. So when you charge more on a credit card, what happens to your minimum payment?
You charge more, you got to pay more, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's a simple interest line of credit, just like any other line of credit. And that's a HELOC. Mortgages are fixed costs because most mortgages in the first position are, not all, but most are 30-year fixed.
I was thinking about this over the weekend because that's what I do in my free time is think about second mortgages.
Oh, man. We'll have to talk about this, Mike.
Okay. Another session. So I think that there's a perception from media and movies that second liens are bad, right? And we talk all the time how if you get
the boogeyman,
you get a second lien on the property, like a HELOC, you could be consolidating some of that high interest debt that you have, like credit cards or personal payments. The story that always comes to mind for me is Damon John, Shark Tank guy.
Okay.
The FUBU guy.
Okay.
Part of his...
I don't watch Shark Tank. All I know is Mark Cuban, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So part of his origin story was that his mom took out did some type of cash out refinance, probably did a second on their home to finance his manufacturing site, which was also the house.
Yeah.
So it's his story. I'll say at the least it would be very different had his mom not been a homeowner, right? So what I was thinking about is there's often this negative perception. I was like, well, it's a lower interest rate loan. Why would that be a bad thing? That seems like a good thing. I was like, okay. The one thing I could think is if you get in a spot where you can't pay it and you file bankruptcy, if you had a credit card, that just gets wiped away because it's not collateralized. A mortgage they can call it due and potentially foreclose.
Yes.
Right. That's you don't get loans anticipating having to file bankruptcy typically, right? People are in rough spots.
And these days, people don't give out loans without the ability to repay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But that was the only downside I could see to doing a debt consolidation.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, a HELOC at 9 or 8% is probably more favorable than credit card debt at 30%.
Right.
Yeah. That's it in a nutshell.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's all we have for today, unless there's anything else. I guess I would just point to interest rates and where they're headed. We're just going to talk about PCE.
Okay.
Have we graduated knowing what PCE stands for?
No.
Personal consumption expenditure. I always get them mixed up with PPI and CPI and everything else, but PCE is the Fed's favorite measure of inflation. Us loan officer mortgage nerds like to talk about this stuff. Sorry. But this Friday, the PCE is coming out, and it's a big one. The month that's rolling off from last year was 50 basis points month over month for core. Now, as long as we don't have what happened to us on CPI, remember our headline was 50 bips?
That was bad. Yeah.
What was core? 30?
It was too high.
It was too high. So I was
Trying to forget.
yeah, well, I was all excited.
Yeah.
And then we got the rug pull of a 50 basis point month over month inflation print for CPI. So I'm a little cautiously optimistic, but what I'm telling you is PCE should be favorable, and we should see as much as a 20, and if we're really lucky, a 30 basis point improvement in the year over year inflation stuff. So that means like a core PCE at 2.6. 10-year treasury has been dropping for how many weeks now?
Well, rates have been 5 weeks in a row.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at the 10-year treasury this morning. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
4.39. This is so weird. It's exhausting following the 10-year treasury these days, because 5 weeks ago we were at 4.8. Now we're at 4.39. And what I'm telling you is on Friday, if we do get that favorable PCE print, so everyone thinks CPI is the gold standard. It's not. It's PCE. And if that's favorable, guarantee you, maybe I should walk that back. We should. There's a possibility, in the realm of possibility, that the 10-year treasury drops further, which is pretty significant given it just improved 40 basis points in the last month or so.
We also have initial jobless claims. So there's a lot of data that's coming out this week.
Oh, wow. Are you thinking about because of Doge? Like, is that going to start showing up in the prints?
Well, no, we think because of severance packages, it won't, right?
Yeah.
But it's just another thing that moves mortgage rates typically. But just big week of data, because the home indexes are coming out this week too, with Case Shiller and the FHFA, right? So there's just lots of data this week, just in general.
Yeah. We'll keep you informed, guys. That's all we got for you today. So look out for Friday. Hopefully rates are dropping further from here. Thank you as always for listening. I'm supposed to remember, if you enjoyed the content today, would you please do us the favor of liking and subscribing to this podcast? We need to start at the front end, by the way, start doing that. We really suck at it. All right. Thanks, guys.
On that note.